ADHD can look and feel and is different depending on your age, depending on lots of different parts of your identity. And I just, I didn't, when I got re-diagnosed, it made a lot more sense to me. And what the doctor was saying was things like what was going on internally in your brain. There's the hyperactivity. I wasn't that kind of extrovertedly excitable necessarily, but there was a lot going on inside my brain. And I just thought that was normal. I just thought everyone's brain goes at a million miles an hour. Turns out they don't.
Welcome to Engage Presents. I'm Engage co-founder and president Jake Olson. In this interview series, I ask Engage talent the most common questions we hear from event planners to help you get to know them and their stories in 15 minutes or less. Thanks for listening. Welcome to another episode of Engage Presents. I'm Engage President Jake Olson. Alongside me today, a very cool gentleman. I don't know if it's politically correct to call you a Kiwi or not there, but coming from New Zealand, probably the furthest interview we've ever done on this channel. Thank you so much for joining us today, Alex Campbell.
You're welcome. Good to be here.
All right, Alex. So you are an ADHD coach and trainer. You were one of the very first people in the UK to ever be diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah.
Walk us through what that diagnosis was. How old were you? How do you kind of figure out that you were kind of on the precipice of something that, millions of people were going to deal with in just, a short time?
Yeah, it is kind of a unique, I guess, position to be in, to be one of the first 40 kids diagnosed. I have a unique experience because for many people, they're diagnosed later in life. So, growing up in the 90s, people say it's a real privilege to be diagnosed. It was a privilege to be diagnosed in the 90s, but it was also an interesting time in our life to be diagnosed, as in what we understood about ADHD and forms of neurodiversity then to what we know now is quite different. And I got re-diagnosed as an adult because I actually thought that I'd grown out of my ADHD. And then I burnt out of a career in the film industry, and it turned that a lot of it not realizing like who I was and my differences around being
Sure. What
ADHD.
was the doctor's, I guess, first, you know, analysis of it? What did they say, it was, or what they tell you to do?
Yeah, well, I guess in the 90s when I was diagnosed as a kid, I was that classic like boy who would bouncing around the classroom. Like I kind of did fit the stereotype, but that's like only a very small piece of what a lot of people experience. Like that's not everyone's experience of ADHD. What's interesting though was when I got re-diagnosed as an adult, because ADHD can look and feel and is different depending on your age, depending on lots of different parts of your identity. And I just I didn't, when I got re-diagnosed, it made a lot more sense to me. And what the doctor was saying was things like what was going on internally in your brain. There's the hyperactivity. I wasn't that kind of extrovertedly excitable necessarily, but there was a lot going on inside my brain. And I just thought that was normal. I just thought everyone's brain goes at a million miles an hour. Turns out they don't, and that was quite a big shift for me. Was like, oh, stuff that I just thought of was just everybody. Turns out that's quite ADHD, and I didn't know that. So there was quite a big shift for me between being diagnosed at 4 and then diagnosed in my late 20s.
Absolutely. And you kind of hit on some words there that I think will answer this next question, but you talked kind of
Sure.
about your unique experience in that way, but there are some things that most people who don't have ADHD still deal with, and that kind of gets us to you speak to corporate audiences, you do it often. How do you make the topic of ADHD relevant or relatable to those who may not actually be diagnosed with ADHD but experience some
Mm.
of those things in a
Yeah.
setting?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we tend to like look at ADHD just through a lens as to what we think we understand. And normally that lens in which we look at ADHD, and we could insert dyslexia here or autism or other facets of neurodivergence. We tend to have like a very fast, quick judgment about, oh yeah, that person's lazy. It must be because of ADHD. Or that person can't focus because ADHD. And and what we're doing is we're judging without having any really full understanding about what's actually going on for someone or what's going on for an individual. And I am ADHD is me, but it's not all it's so much of what I struggle with is when people look at my behavior and just judge it negatively based on what they think they understand about what ADHD is, when that might not be what's going on for me. And so I think there's something about when you're not ADHD, when you're not neurodivergent, because I speak about lots of different forms of neurodivergence. there's the big thing is actually going on a journey of trying to really understand what it looks like, feels like for your colleagues, not just, oh yeah, I've read a book on ADHD, tick, I've done it. Like that doesn't really scratch the surface. The reality is ADHD or ADHD is often not seen in isolation, by the way. So quite often, statistically, if someone's ADHD, they might be something else as well. But when you actually get to know a colleague and there's trust and safety in the relationship to be able to ask them about how they see their ADHD playing out in the workplace, for instance, how they understand that, what's going on, but also not just the challenges, but what about the brilliant stuff? That's the other thing that we don't talk about here, which is when you're a colleague, like a lot of ADHD people I work with don't realize their brilliance. Like it's often shut down in them. Like a lot of, I'm like, wow, what if you could be like that? This thing that you think of as quite good, more in the workplace. Well, that would be amazing, but I don't know how, because I'm worried they're going to judge me or that kind of thing. So there's a lot of it is about when someone does disclose that they're neurodivergent, is actually going on a bit of a journey to try and understand what that is for them, as opposed to, oh yeah, you're ADHD, I put you into a box. That's what you are. That's possibly one of the most unhelpful responses. And yet, that's a very common response. So I hope that gives you a bit of a flavor about this idea of personalizing, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about, just maybe one or two things. What can a leader do to better support neurodiversity in the workplace?
Well, I think it's multifaceted, to be honest with you. I think there's quite a lot of different things to consider. Part of it is also for a leader, part of it is going on like a cultural change journey, which is trying to understand how does my role within the organization work in relationship to what the organization is saying about this. That's a big thing, right? Um, Part of it is just knowledging up, starting to have more awareness, like actual truthful awareness about what ADHD is, for instance, is, and then starting to, depending on your role, starting to have conversations with people about this, like talking about it, so that you normalize the experience. If ADHD is just seen as some weird thing, nothing will ever become less, the stigma will never go. We have to try and normalize the ADHD experience. So people need to be safe to talk about it to begin with. Are you, as a leader, a safe pair of hands to talk about it? Is a good question to ask yourself.
Hmm.
Am I going to be non-judgmental? Am I going to be curious to learn more as opposed to, yeah, but aren't we all a little bit ADHD? That's possibly the worst response. If you can take anything from watching this video, never do that. um, so so there's that. The other thing as well is doing talks, doing trainings that are tailored to either company wide, but also specific to different parts of leadership. Because there'll be different remits on different leaders, whether they're middle management, they're people leaders, it might be more senior executive leaders who all have different parts of the business that you're responsible for. And how does neurodiversity impact on these different parts of your business? Because it will, it's already there. 20% is there of your business, right? And so 20% of your business will be neurodivergent. So are you leveraging that? Do you understand that? Is that something you're talking about? Because if you're not, 20% is quite a big piece of the pie, right? And that's based on fairly archaic data, which suggests that probably it's more. So going on a journey trying to understand it, really harness it and normalize it, we see organizations flourish.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. Really awesome. How has your perspective on ADHD evolved over time, not only from
Mm.
your own lived experience, but now that you're, a therapist and mental health instructor as well?
Yeah. So I definitely, as, being born in the 80s and raised in the 90s as a kid, um, I definitely had what we call like the deficit mindset of ADHD, as in ADHD is a problem. In fact, it's got two negative parts to it. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's so sexy, right? Deficit and disorder. Sign me up for some of that, right? Like it's already like a lot of us, and I had this perspective of ADHD is a bad thing. I am the kid who's got a problem. I need to get it under control. Like that was my perspective growing up as a kid with ADHD. And I was one of the few kids that even had that label. In fact, and that was the thing that I was kind of laboring under. When I got re-diagnosed and as I've gone more into my adulthood, I'm realizing that actually a lot of the time people in my environment have a massive impact on my ability to thrive or not. It's not just all on me. I'm trying to knowledge up and do my own work. But what about everybody else? And so for me, I don't see ADHD as a deficit. And I don't necessarily see it fully as a disorder, but I do see it as a disability at times. Like I can feel very disabled by environments, by people, but also I have other co-occurrences that might be to do with, say, I might have other mental health concerns that might be attached to that that can feel quite disabling for me at times. So I think I hold a more nuanced perspective of ADHD. I don't see it as this wholly bad, terrible thing. I see it as a source of brilliance. But I also recognize and appreciate that ADHD can come with challenges. The challenging thing about the challenges is if you don't understand your challenges in relationship to ADHD and your neurological differences, it becomes even more challenging. One of the ways that we can develop and nurture strengths is having a framework, and that's that I use the VA character strengths. It's 24 different character strengths that all human beings possess. And one of the big things about this is actually going, oh, yeah, this is what I look like when I'm in leadership. This is what I look like when I'm in social intelligence. This is what I look like when I'm in gratitude or hope. I'm just listing off a few of the different strengths that are attached to virtues. It's actually very helpful to go, oh, that's what me looks like in my strengths here. And I got tangible examples for it because I've got language for it.
Absolutely. And what a powerful tool. That's really powerful. You can tell you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
Last question to kind of involve that. So again, working with these people, your talks, kind of just briefly walk us through, do you bring this research and science into your talks? Is it kind of depending on, what they're
Yeah.
looking you for? And then lastly, what's the thing you want people to leave with,
Mm.
one or two thoughts you want people to leave with after your talk?
I do various different types of talks. I often do talks actually in a series because a one-hit talk, I know from research, doesn't actually see much change. It's like a stab in the arm type approach. What I'm seeing that has actually transformational impact is a series of talks. And it depends on what the organization is looking for. But a classic series of talks will be first talk is what even is ADHD? Or what is even ADHD in relationship to the neurodiversity paradigm, right? And I might bring in other lived experience there because I'm dyslexic, I'm dyspraxic, I'm dysphasic, I've got all the disses. Like I can interweave the fact that often we are a combination of things. And it's trying to help people. At the end of talk one, often it's like people have a very clear takeaway about, oh, this is what ADHD is. Like I came into it with one idea, I'm leaving with another idea, and I'm really interested in this. So people leave curious. That's what I want. I want them to leave curious and wanting more and asking some questions. Because if they're asking questions, they're engaged, right? And my talks interweave coaching models and tools, evidence-based frameworks. I like touch on what's going on inside the brain, but you're not going to be getting a load of psychobabble and jargon. You're going to be getting enough for managers and people of all parts of the business to kind of go, oh, okay, I've got a bit of a way into this now, right? And I'll be interweaving my lived experience, anecdotally, my experience working as a therapist and as a coach. So those are three different perspectives: my lived experience, my experience as a coach, but also my experience clinically. So you're going to get different experiences around that.
I could sit here all night and talk to you about this.
Sure.
I have so many questions, but we don't have that time. And I also don't want to spoil too much because we want people to book Alex. And if you do want to book Alex, you can visit
Yeah.
letsengage.com. Check out his profile there. As you can tell, very, very knowledgeable, very cool, very fun guy who, definitely is going to bring a lot to your next talk. And Alex, thank you so much again for joining us, and really happy that we got to do this halfway across the world.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Jake.
Awesome. Well, stay tuned for more Engage Presents.